Hey friends, welcome to today's episode of the Daily Coffee Pro. Today we are going to be talking about why you should care what's happening with the C market. Now, I want to preface this by saying I know very few people in the coffee industry who are experts at the C market. I am absolutely not one of the people who was an expert at the coffee C market. But because of the podcast that I have the good fortune of having had people come on my podcast that are actually very knowledgeable about it and have taught me a few things about the C market. So let's talk about the C market and let's talk about why you should care. This week in particular was a very good demonstration as to why you should care about what's happening with the C market. So we're going to start by saying or defining what the C market is. The C market is a futures market that trades coffee for the world. It typically trades what we call commodity coffee, not specialty coffee. However, specialty coffee is traded on the C market. What you perhaps understand as commodity coffee what you consider to be specialty coffee is coffee that scores an 80 or above when cupped. Commodity coffee is anything that scores less than that. Now, the C market isn't defined by the score of the coffee. The C market is defined by things like volume. So massive volumes of coffee are what's traded on the C market. Now, if you look at companies like Nestle, for example, Nestle buys hundreds of millions of tons, I believe, of coffee a year. They buy an astronomical amount of coffee per year. There isn't that much specialty coffee available. And in order to grow enough coffee for companies like Nestle to be able to use, bear in mind, I'll give you a reference number. Nestle sells 6,000 cups of coffee per second. So I remember speaking with someone from Nestle on the podcast. It equates to something like 100,000 tons of coffee that is roasted per day. So get your head around that, right? If that's the kinds of volumes that we're looking at, the kind of coffee they're going to be using is coffee from farms that can be processed quickly and grown en masse. And in order to do something like that, you can't have the focus be on the kind of quality, it's got to be on yield. So the C market is where these huge volumes of coffee are traded, and they're traded in the future. So somebody buys coffee off these traders for a future date. Now, let's take a look at what happened this week on the C market and why it's so important. To give you a timeline, in April 2009, the C market was at $1.15, so $1.15, and continued to go up to $2.99, which was the highest it's been in a number of decades. It's the highest it's been since. From 2011 to 2013, it went to $1.05. And then from there, it went to what it is. So in July 2014, it was $1.95. Okay. In 2001 was the lowest it's been which is the lowest it's been since today. So in 2001, it was at 46 cents, 46.2 per pound. Okay, so to buy 1 pound of green coffee in November 2001 was 46.2 US dollars per pound. The only other low that we've had that was lower, that was as around those kinds of numbers, was in 1992 when it was at 55.7 cents per pound. Today, so the from the numbers I read out before, $1.15 up to $2 was kind of where it was hovering up and down, with the highest being almost $3 per pound. This week was the lowest that it's been since 2000, and I have the chart over here. If you go to investing.com and look up the C market, you'll be able to see that since 2001, the lowest that it has been, am I right there? Since 2004 is the last time it was around the kind of low that it is today, but it was lower a couple of days ago. So a couple of days ago, it was 92 cents per pound. 1994 was the only other time it was this low, which was at 94. Today, it's shot up a couple of cents to 94 again, but 2004 was about the last time it was as low as it is right now. We had another drop last year, which was at 96. And we're all very concerned. Why are we very concerned? Especially people keep saying to me, well, why do we care what this number is at if we deal in specialty coffee? Like, who cares what this number is? Well, let me tell you why we care. We care because the specialty market, or the farmers who are farming specialty coffee, are never just farming specialty coffee. They're always farming specialty coffee plus commodity coffee plus other crops. So it is getting unsustainable for them to farm just coffee now. Because, it is getting unsustainable for them to farm just coffee because at 92 cents per pound, if you are picking by hand, if you are processing all your coffee by hand, which is the way that most farmers are doing it, in some countries like Brazil, they have mechanized farming, but that's about the only place that they do it. You cannot produce a pound of coffee for 92 cents per pound. It's just not possible. So what's happening there is that they're selling the coffee at less than it costs for them to produce it. In order for them to do that, they have to compensate their income with other crops like macadamia nuts or corn or avocados or bananas or other commodity products, soybeans, sugar, all of that kind of stuff. The more money they're going to start earning from those other crops, the more enticing it's going to be for a farmer to say, well, these 5 hectares that I have for this lot of coffee, I'm going to cut it down and convert more of it to a different commodity product because I need to feed my family. The specialty coffee that they're producing is tied to, indirectly but still tied to, the commodity coffee that they're selling. And what I've learned from the guests who come on my podcast is, let's say today they're selling their commodity coffee for $1 per pound and they're selling their specialty coffee for $2 per pound. If in 12 months from now, the C market goes up to $3 per pound, which it has done before, they're going to turn around and logically believe that, well, if I've tripled the price of my commodity market coffee, then it stands to reason that I should triple the price of my specialty coffee, or the specialty grade coffee that I'm growing. that coffee is going to be 3 times 2. And that's just for the farm gate price, the price that they're selling to the person who's going to take it and export it. So you've still got a couple of people in between from that point to who it gets to in the roastery. So the farm gate price, then there's the FOB price. The FOB means free on board. Free on board includes from the farmer all the way up to the ship. That then gets exported to another country, and the importer in that country then takes a little bit. Now, I tell you what, they don't make anywhere near as much money as you think that they do. Well, that's what they've told me again and again on this podcast. Anyway, the people who are making the bulk of that money are the roasters. So the roasters are buying this green coffee, making, let's say, $5 a pound at least on each bag of coffee. The people at the front end of the cafe are suffering because they're not able to raise their prices of a cup of coffee because the consumer's not prepared to pay for it. However, they can't have a business if they're not paying whatever the roasters set for them to do it. Their only other option to increase their margins is either to buy shitter coffee or to start roasting their own, which is an added business expense that they may not have the cash flow to do it. So the result of that is, well, instead of paying for coffee that has been responsibly sourced, I can't increase my margins by increasing the cost of a cup of coffee. Well, the price I'm charging for a cup of coffee. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buy shit coffee instead, because that's the only way I can keep my business alive. This is a real problem. This is a really big problem that we are facing right now. And there is a way that you, as an employee in this industry, can start shifting the way that different roasters and cafes start looking at the way that they approach the coffee market. When you go for a job, and you may think that as an employee, like a barista or a roaster, you don't really have much of an influence on this. I'm here to tell you that you do. When you go to interview with a roaster or with a cafe, start asking questions from the employer, your potential future employer. What is your buying philosophy around your coffee? And what you're looking for there is to try and understand what understanding these people have about the effect that their buying practices have on the coffee supply chain. If they don't have a focus on coffee that's purchased through relationship buying, and what we mean by that is people who go and negotiate contracts direct with the farmer, long-term contracts. The reason these contracts are so important is because they ensure that people who are growing specialty coffee, specialty grade coffee, are secure in the crops for a number of years to come. It could be 2 or 3 years to come. And they have contracts with those growers to buy the coffee for the next 3 years or 5 years. If you are not seeking employment with companies that are making those kind of buying philosophy decisions, you are supporting companies that are then going and buying coffee that does not pay a fair price to the farmer. We cannot support these buying practices if we want to guarantee the future of our coffee supply chain. Because what's going to happen is that these growers are not going to be incentivized enough or have enough of a reason to want to continue to grow coffee. We are going to be complicit in the demise of our own supply chain if we don't start thinking about how our employment decisions are contributing to this. Everybody in our industry is playing a role in determining the future of what's happening to our industry. It's a lot more complex than what I've gone through today. And there are much smarter people out there that can talk about it more, and we're getting them on the podcast. But this week it hit the lowest it's been in decades. 92 cents per pound. They cannot afford to produce pounds of coffee for that price. Let's start shifting our long-term career decisions to support the businesses who are supporting the farmers that are going to have sustainable businesses. Let's leave it there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Happy Friday. Have an amazing weekend ahead. And I'll see you again on Monday for a discussion on the Daily Coffee Pro. Peace, love, and peanut butter, everyone.